Pavilion again, and welcome to the mayors and colleagues from local and regional governments that are joining, but also to the partners that are in the room. The session today is a session that we're going to dedicate to amplifying multilateral climate governance, bringing the local government constituency conversation to the climate processes. And we have this title, which tries to make the link between the conversations at COP and the conversations that local and regional governments organized constituency is having with the rest of the international system, the international governance architecture. As you know, the governance architecture that we need does not only relate to climate, but it does also relate to equality, to justice, to the development of a new social contract that will enable us to foster sustainable societies. And in order to do this, we have gone through a very long path of a self-organized local and regional governments constituency with numerous networks that work at national, regional, and international level to gather priorities and to strengthen interlocution between local governments and the international system. And so what we are trying to do today is to connect some of those conversations. And one of the important reasons to do that is simply because it is efficient, is simply because you are not able to discuss climate if you don't discuss development, and you cannot discuss development if you don't discuss equality, right? Those connections are there. But sometimes when we are together in gatherings like this one, it seems that we are not connecting the dots and that we are sticking to certain parts of that. So we want to bring this holistic conversation to the LGMA Pavilion. And we want to also give some news on what is happening on structuring our conversation at the United Nations level, in particular through the creation of an advisory group for the Secretary General of the United Nations on local and regional governments. And some of the members of that advisory group are here. But we are going to start this session with some introductory words from the president of United Cities and local governments. And we will follow with our honorary president, past president, Park Stau, to give a framework of what we have been discussing. President, the floor is yours.
I will speak Turkish. Yes. UCLG Genel Sekreteri Sayın Emilia Saiz, çok kıymetli UCLG ailesi, değerli belediye başkanları, yerel yöneticiler, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, şehirlerimizin ve yerel yönetimlerin küresel iklim çalışmalarında oynadığı önemli role odaklanan bu panelde sizlerle bir arada olmaktan büyük bir memnuniyet duyuyorum. Okay. Okay. Şehirlerimizin ve yerel yönetimlerin küresel iklim çalışmalarında oynadığı önemli role odaklanan bu panelde sizlerle birlikte olmaktan büyük bir mutluluk duyuyorum. Birleşmiş Milletler tarafından her yıl düzenlenen uluslararası bir iklim konferansı olan COP, 1994'te yürürlüğe giren BM İklim Değişikliği Çevre Sözleşmesi'ni gözden geçirme ve uygulama sürecini takip etmektedir. UCLG Dünya Başkanı olarak küresel arenada temsil edilen ve dünya genelinde kentsel dönüşümün öncüsü olan teşkilatımızın bu denli büyük bir toplantıda etkin bir paydaş olmasından duyduğum mutluluğu ifade etmek istiyorum. UCLG'nin çatısı altında bir araya gelerek yerel yönetimlerin küresel düzeyde daha etkin bir şekilde temsil edilmesini sağlamak ve politik oluşturuculara rehberlik etmek adına önemli adımlar attık. Teşkilatımızın sürdürdüğü çalışmalar neticesinde şehirlerin küresel arenadaki görünürlüğünü çok daha ileri seviyelere taşıdık. Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Sekreterinin liderliğinde oluşturulan ve UCLG ile birlikte çalışan Birleşmiş Milletler Yerel ve Bölgesel Yönetimler Danışma Grubu, şehirlerin gündemlerini BM'ye taşıyacak önemli bir mekanizmadır. Bu kapsamda bugün burada bulunmamız sadece yerel değil, aynı zamanda küresel düzeyde iklim eylemi için taahhütte bulunan şehirlerin birlikteliğini de temsil etmektedir. Bu toplantı aynı zamanda sadece bugün için değil, gelecek nesiller için de daha yaşanabilir dünya vizyonumuzu belirleme açısından kritik bir önem taşımaktadır. Hepinizin bildiği üzere insan odaklı karbondioksit emisyonunun 2030 yılına kadar önemli ölçüde azaltılması, en geç 2050 yılına kadar net sıfır emisyona ulaşılması ve küresel ısınmanın 1,5 derecede tutulması yıkıcı hasarlardan kaçınmak için hayati adımlardır. Ancak bu hedeflere ulaşma konusunda dünya henüz beklenen hızda ve kararlılıkta değildir. Şehirlerimiz küresel karbondioksit emisyonlarının %70'inden sorumlu bir konumda bulunmaktadır ve kentsel nüfus hızla artmaya devam etmektedir. Bu hızlı nüfus artışı karbon ekonomisine dayanmayan ve doğanın insanlar tarafından sömürülmediği bir geleceği zorunlu kılmaktadır. Yerel ve bölgesel yönetimlerin temsilcisi olan UCLG, adil ve eşitlikçi bir iklim eyleminin uygulanması adına insanlığın geleceği için paktı kabul etmiştir. Paktımız, insanlar, dünyamız ve yönetimler için ortak geleceği daha iyi hale getirecek pek çok taahhüdü içermektedir. Gelecek için pakt, doğayla kurduğumuz ortak ilişkiyi dönüştürmeyi hedefleyen bir girişimdir. Bu pakt, iklim değişikliğiyle mücadelede yerel ve bölgesel yönetimlerin işbirliğini öne çıkarırken, aynı zamanda iklim değişikliğini azaltma ve onun etkilerine uyum sağlamayı öngörmektedir. Gelecek için pakt, aynı zamanda doğayla olan ilişkimizi yapıcı bir şekilde yeniden tanımlamak ve eşitsizliklerin giderilmesine de odaklanmaktadır. Bu pakt sayesinde bizler de yerel ekonomileri canlandırarak ve doğayla uyumlu projeleri teşvik ederek sürdürülebilir bir geleceğe doğru ilerlemeyi amaçlamaktayız. Paktımıza bağlı olarak geleceğimizi şekillendirdiğimiz bu dönemde COP gibi önemli bir toplantıda söz alıyor olmamız bizler için önemli bir kazanımdır. Toplantımız boyunca ele alacağımız biyoçeşitliliğin korunması, gençlik ve gelecek nesiller, kentsel sürdürülebilir kalkınma amaçlarının finansmanı, sosyal koruma ve eşitlik gibi konular geleceğimizi inşa etmek adına hayati önem taşımaktadır. Ben de bu konulara kısaca değinmek istiyorum. Küresel iklim değişikliği ve hızlı şehirleşme biyoçeşitliliğimizi tehdit etmektedir. Biyoçeşitliliğin korunması, sürdürülebilir bir geleceğin anahtarıdır. Şehirler olarak doğal kaynaklarımızı korumak ve biyoçeşitliliğin azalmasını engellemek için daha çok hep birlikte çalışmalıyız. Gençler ise geleceğimizin teminatıdır. Onların iklim değişikliği konusundaki endişelerini anlamak ve onların liderliğini teşvik etmek sürdürülebilir bir dünya için önemlidir. Şehir yöneticileri olarak gençleri daha fazla desteklemeli, onları karar ve uygulama süreçlerine dahil etmeliyiz. Kentsel sürdürülebilir kalkınma sadece taahhütlerle değil, aynı zamanda etkili finansmanla mümkündür. Sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedeflerimize ulaşmak ve daha fazla finansman sağlayabilmek için işbirliğimizi daha da güçlendirmek zorundayız. Şehirler, toplumlarımızın dayanışmasını ve sosyal eşitliği destekleyen temel hizmetleri sağlamaktadır. Sosyal koruma, eşitsizlik, eşitlik ve bakım konularında da harekete geçerek daha etkin politikalar izlemeliyiz. Sevgili katılımcılar, bugün ele alacağımız bu konular şehirlerin küresel düzeydeki sorumluluğunu ve etkisini arttırma çabamızın bir yansımasıdır. Sizlerin de kıymetli katkıları ile daha yaşanabilir, sürdürülebilir ve adil bir dünya için çalışmaya devam ederek iklim değişikliği mücadelesinde katkıda bulunma kararlılığımızı hep birlikte sürdüreceğiz. Toplantımızın iyi geçmesini temenni ediyor. Genel Sekreterimiz moderatörlüğünde tüm konuşmacılara başarılar diliyor. Hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
It should be working. Yes. Okay, thank you very much, President. You have touched upon many of the topics that the members of the advisory group are including in the deliberations as our inputs to the Pact for the Future of Humanity, not only the one that we have developed with United Cities and local governments, but also the one that the United Nations is developing within the framework of the Summit of the Future. But above all, what I would like to highlight is this issue of determination. You have expressed our determination to change things, our determination to actually make a livable planet for all. And I think that is the kind of commitment that we are bringing to the table and that I would like to hear all of you talk about. Allow me to invite now to the podium President Park Stau, Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs of South Africa. President, you have experienced these efforts and these perspectives from local government, as Mayor of Johannesburg, as President of the South African Local Government Association, as President of United Cities and local governments, and you're experiencing now the national perspective. And so I would like you to share with us some reflections on how to amplify the multi-level and multilateral perspective with the vision of local governments. How do you look at that, and where does that sit now with the priorities that the planet has and that we have as society? So some reflections on your perspective from where you stand right now.
Thank you very much, Emilia, Secretary General and Moderator. Let me say thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I do feel at home and amongst friends. In many ways, I think, is it? Okay, am I audible now? Okay, in many ways, I think that it would be important to acknowledge the significant progress that has been made with regards to ensuring that local and regional governments and their voices are heard on global multilateral platforms. And I think that the establishment of the advisory group on local and regional governments by the Secretary General is an important milestone in progressing towards ensuring that the voices of local government are heard, but that also local and regional governments are able to not only participate in the negotiating phase, but also participate in the implementation processes. And if you take into account the responsibility of local and regional governments, and I'll use the South African context, the functions of local and regional governments are at the core of addressing a just transition. They are responsible for the distribution of electricity, the reticulation of water, waste management, the built environment, spatial and land use management, transportation, etc., which means that practically they're at the core of the critical issues that need to be managed from a transition point of view. And having them outside the table is not particularly helpful. And what we need to ensure is that that voice is amplified through the mechanisms that have already been created, but ensure that these become more statutory. Ensure that you have formal recognition on the table as a party, local and regional governments. And that not only do you have them there, but that mechanisms of providing the required support from a financing, technical support point of view is directed at local and regional governments to the extent that they would be able to execute better and undertake the responsibility. And I'd like to make an example. In fact, we had this discussion earlier about what the just transition would mean in one of our provinces in the country, the Mpumalanga province, because we are essentially a coal-dependent country in relation to our energy supply, currently experiencing shortages from a supply point of view. And as we enter into the just transition, the province of Mpumalanga that's responsible for 80% of our coal-fired power stations would essentially be decimated unless we manage the just transition, taking into account the practical experiences in a municipality or in the local authorities and the regional government of Mpumalanga. And therefore, having these on the table enables them to practically respond to the challenges, to access the necessary support that they require to be able to implement, but to also amplify the voice of communities, because local and regional governments, particularly local government, is much closer to the people. And the voice that they express has greater expression of what the voice of local communities are and the issues that practically people will experience on the ground.
Well, thank you very much. I think he also deserves an applause. Thank you for those inputs and for making that very important link. As we have been discussing here, the local and the global is closely intertwined. It's not when we take the time to come to this kind of dialogue, we are not discussing theoretical issues or issues in a vacuum. We're actually discussing very, very practical things. And if you don't take into account that vision of development, which is based on the local level, then we will not be able to get very far overall. Allow me now to go to Sharon Dijksma, because the mayor of Utrecht is a part of the advisory group of the Secretary General Guterres. And the Secretary General has charged you, Mayor. I see the Mayor of Amman, also a member of the group. We will be hearing from others that will join later. They have actually asked you to produce a document that will feed into the discussions for the Summit for the Future. That's one of the things that they have asked. They have asked more things. And the second important thing is to produce a proposal for a structural dialogue between the United Nations and local governments. Obviously, the way that you are organizing those inputs is according to the discussions that national governments are going to have for the Summit for the Future. But some of you have been very vocal on specific issues that you feel you need to address first in order to be able to cover this complex agenda. So there are different emphases there. Can you share some of your priorities for this advisory group and what you have been hearing up until now from your colleagues in that group?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Emilia, for having me here. And I have to say, not everybody knows this, but Emilia is also herself a driving force for the change within the UN system that needs to be organized. So I feel a great sisterhood with you and with the many others to really make the difference. And I agree with you when you say that we are at the forefront of a big, probably structural change within the United Nations. It can be done because this advisory group can set the scene at the Summit for the Future to really give the cities the voice, and not only cities, but also the local and regional governments, the strong voice at the table. And for me, it means that we are not only part of the beautiful side events that are all over here, for instance, at COP. What we really need, and you were already pointing this out, is a place at the negotiation table. Because we are not only the implementers, we are also those who make the policy. And for instance, I have been asked to especially look after the issue of future generations. That is something which is really a big issue, because I believe that everything we as policymakers are doing has to be for the future generations and has to be future generation proof. So whether it's the discussion here at the climate top, whether it would be the discussion on development cooperation and how to really strengthen the local South, it doesn't matter all the time. The young people have to be at the heart of the discussion. And I think that if you look at how the UN now is organized, it's said to be the United Nations of the peoples. But the question is, isn't it so that maybe the local governments much more are the representatives of the peoples than sometimes national governments could be? And this is a sensitive subject, I know, eh? Yes. We know. So we have to be like a bit thoughtful and diplomatic, but persistent. So what we need is a seat in the structure at the negotiation table. We need the access for cities and local governments directly to funding, also internationally. And I think that we also need to align ourselves with young people, with the representatives of organizations, civil organizations, for instance, youth organizations or others, to really make a strong alignment. And finally, I would say that local solutions for global problems most of the times are the most effective solutions. And we show every day in my city, for instance, how a city in the future can look like. And this is what I hope that the UN will see. And I have seen that the Secretary General is extremely brave. We have seen that recently. So I think that the Summit for the Future can be the game changer that we all need. And we need to cooperate ourselves and also try to influence national governments to support us. So it's good that you are now here also, but we need to talk to our ministers and tell them that we owe this place, actually. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. We are not being done a favor. It's not a favor. We need that space because it is a space that is needed for the world. And that is also part of the discussion that we are having around this COP. And the reason why we wanted to link this conversation to COP, because we keep talking about communities taking responsibility. We keep talking about communities having to change the way they live, the way they behave, having to make sacrifices, the patterns of consumption and production. But at the end of the day, the only way for communities to want to do that is to actually understand what is happening, feel owners of their own destiny, right? And collaborate also to the notion of development, which it might not be the right one, the one that we have now. And I think that is part of the place at the decision-making table. So I am very happy that Deborah Roberts is with us. Deborah is a great friend of the LGMA, of our focal point here as constituency. She is also an Ubuntu advisor of UCLG, and she plays a very important role in the IPCC because actually she is linking the perspective of local to the discussions that feed into the scientific discussions that are feeding in these global conversations. So from you, Deborah, we would like to see how do you experience the small baby steps that we are having in gaining a space for local governments in the international arena, but also how do you see our agenda here in a new vision for development, and in particular with the perspective also of loss and damage and the new priorities that are coming up here at COP? How do you link these agendas? Welcome, Deborah.
Thanks, Amelia, and thanks as always for the opportunity to bring in the world of science to our debates. And science, I know for most practitioners, probably is something you don't deal with in your day-to-day lives, but I think the COVID pandemic proved the use of evidence-based decision-making. And I think we live in a world where the uncertainty of tomorrow is such that we need data and we need evidence to take the types of decisions that allow us to forge an equitable and just development path ahead of us. And so that's important. In terms of the small strides we are making, unfortunately, they are entirely out of step with what the science is demanding. The science is demanding that we run a race. And currently, I think if we're power walking, we're lucky. So there is a big disjuncture between the speed at which we need to be moving towards a whole of society approach. And that's what the science is saying very clearly. It's a race where we can't leave any individual or family or household or city or village behind. Everyone has to be involved and we have to move speedily. So I think there is a disjuncture. So gatherings like this are important because it's pressure on, keeps the momentum. That requirement, as Sharon said, for that seat at the table, Park said that as well, is absolutely vital. We can't give up on that issue. There are moments that are going to be significant for us at the local level from a scientific point of view, certainly from the IPCC perspective. For the first time, the global scientific assessment process, which really informs what's happening in those negotiating calls, is going to turn its attention to cities and the local level. So for the first time, we will see generated evidence, which is accepted by all of the governments, which reflects the scale at which we operate. That's a very powerful political moment for us. We cannot ignore that moment. We need to be rallying to monitor that process, to review the documents, to think about how we use that information, both in terms of implementation, but politically when it comes out to secure that seat at the table. But we have a unique challenge in this group. The science is very clear, and I know this is not a popular argumentation, but we are going to cross 1.5. Of that, I am absolutely certain. The science is there, and despite the pledges made, we have huge gaps between pledges and implementation. And we are going to be the people who first have to deal with the new world of living in overshoot of 1.5, a place of irreversible change, a set of entirely new sets of circumstances, stresses, and threats where inequality is likely to grow. The question is, what are the new tools we need to deal with that world? And that's absolutely critical. It's going to affect our natural systems. It's going to affect the poor and vulnerable communities. I see a number of indigenous representatives here. These are communities who will be directly under threat in that world. So I think this is critical. We need to be the first to pick up that challenge. And if we talk at the Summit of the Future, we need to be talking about that new and different world and be brave enough to bring that, because that's going to change loss and damage finance. It's going to bring limits to adaptation. The kind of things we're doing now are no longer going to be effective in that world, and we need to prepare for it.
This is always a difficult conversation when you work with local government, Deborah, because I say it, sometimes you have heard me say, local governments and local leaders are very much about hope, right? They are the ones that are at the forefront of every single problem. And because they do that, they need to bring hope, and they don't like to talk about sacrifice. It's very difficult for local and regional governments leaders to talk about having to sacrifice, having to accept that we failed. And even if it is not your responsibility, you are always dealing with failure, right? So I do think that we need to take this seriously, what you are proposing. And I think it needs to reach our inputs to the Summit for the Future. That we will need, you were saying it the other day in one of our meetings, we will need a different toolbox, right? We will need a different understanding of development, a different future model, but also a different toolbox to address what is going to be happening to us. So thank you for bringing this here, and let us see how we can include that in the discussion. I am now very, very pleased to have with us also a very important component of our discussions. Don't worry, President, we will rescue it later. It has always been communities, communities, communities. And in this discourse that we always bring to the international table around communities, there is one communities, which is the indigenous communities, that is usually missing. So now we are very privileged to have the local leadership component combined with that indigenous perspective. In many places around the world, this is the case. And we are very happy to have with us Mr. Tillua Napoleon Uyucar Caniras, prefect of Morona, Santiago in Ecuador. Ecuador is making great strides for nature. There have been recent decisions to leave oil in the ground that the rest of the world also needs to look at, prefect. From your perspective, how can we fill the gap between the multilateral system and the communities that you represent? And how can the municipal movement that you are an active part of, our family in UCLG, support that? Welcome.
Hello. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for the invitation to be here. Thank you, the moderator. For us as indigenous to represent and to be in this special event is very important because we feel that we are representing as indigenous people. But now I'm coming here in representation for 23 governors from Ecuador. I would like to say thank to Paula Pavón. She's our president in Congope. Congope is the organization where we are all the governors from Ecuador. So,
And she's a member of the advisory group. Exactly.
I'm sorry.
She is a member of
Yeah.
the advisory group.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for everybody, brothers and sisters. I can say brothers and sisters because we have to feel like brothers. Because there are many cups and we have to ask what we did with many cups. Amik mahrumi yatsur uharmananuna vichaitiwa makete yatumin shiram timtusan morun Santiago narihi hensang ikwatura prefectos namra ruirunanuna narihi atumin amik mahrumi. So I will start saying that everybody says we are spending time, but I would like to say there are no one people decided to fight the climate change because we are only in meetings again, but we are doing nothing. But now, in representation of all the governors from Ecuador, I would like to say this. As you know that the local governments, we have the chance to communicate directly with the communities. So we have much time in the communities. That means that we have to work together with the communities. That's why in this important event, I invite two elders, two leaders from the indigenous people. Here is Jose Isach. He is the president of all indigenous from the Amazon from Ecuador. And thank you very much for coming to be here. So what do we do in Morona, Santiago as prefect, as governor? 5 days ago, we decided to make Amazon platform. That means Zamora, Chinchipe, Pastas, and Morona, Santiago province together as governors and together with the indigenous group, indigenous community, we decided to make this platform. That means we are going to preserve 7 million hectares of the forest. How we did this? We went to the communities, we talked with the communities, because we have to participate directly how they use, how they want to use the lands. How they will use the lands in the future too. Because everybody are talking about to preserve the forest, but nobody knows than the indigenous people. So as governor, of course, in legal way, we make the model how to use the lands, but if we don't work together with the indigenous group, will never work. So also, we have to think what's happening in each COPs. When we came here, or when we come here in COPs, what's happening? The presidents of the countries, they have meeting in the other room, and local governments, we are in the other room. What's happening? Are we talking about the climate change, or are we fighting? We have to decide to be in the same level, and we need to access to be a part of resolution of the final decision. When we do this, we can say that we are working together for the climate change. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm the governor, but I'm feeling as indigenous people, Achuar people here, how this will work. This will work when the oldest peoples respect the capacity of the youth.
Yeah.
And when the youth respect the experience of the elders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think if there is a reason why we can, when they ask us to justify that claim for the seat at the table, one of the very strong arguments that we have is that we bring all communities to the table, and that is a more inclusive process. And I think that you have actually vocalized that. You have put that in words for all of us, and I don't think that we are doing it well enough or often enough, but it's certainly something that we can ensure that feeds into at least the agenda of the summit for the future, and that is part and parcel of our discussions here. So thank you very, very much for that important message that we will try to address as a constituency. Allow me now to go to Marianne Offertom from Lincolnshire County Council in North Kevenstein District Council of the United Kingdom. And with you, we have worked a lot at European level, addressing issues of finance, the financial gap that we have, and the need for that dialogue that the prefect was talking about between national governments and local governments, and a new multi-level governance structure. Not only at multilateral level, but also within countries. So can you share some of their perspective on how we should fit that into the discussions that link COP with the summit for the future?
Thank you very much, Amelia. And thank you for those excellent talks that I've enjoyed hearing. And I have spent some time in the Amazon, 6 weeks in the wild. So I do appreciate very much all of the wildlife and the detail that's there. Absolutely fantastic. And so important to preserve, as is every corner of our countries. The CEMR, that's the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, have produced a document which we've worked on the finances, and thank you, it's been a joint effort. We've had a look at how much the councils have to spend, our municipalities, because many people pay significant taxes into central government, but how much of that comes down to actually provide the services that are needed by all of the people in our areas? And that figure varies. Some places it's 20%, some places it's up to 40%. So I think our big argument is not just a begging bowl, but to demonstrate that if we have those taxes that are collected centrally, and they're much bigger than the taxes that we collect locally, the big money goes straight into central government. If we have more of that money, we are closer to the people, as has been talked about, and more able to accurately and efficiently place those resources in the right places where they can have the biggest effect. We do have to make sure that it's not always a cost to the individuals. Sometimes it's about making sure that our homes are properly insulated, both from heat and from cold, and therefore not so expensive to maintain. And therefore people can see their lives improve at the same time as assisting the planet. So we look closely at the way in which different governments devolve, put down the funding, and those that are more centralized, that hold on to the most, when times are tough, what do you think? They hold on to it even more.
Yeah.
And when times are a little easier, they are more decentralized. And those that are most decentralized, that already share the power and the money the most, those were the municipalities, when times are tough, that turn to their communities and their municipalities to do more. So they actually decentralized more, and those are the ones that were most successful. And so the research is summarized, if anybody would like a copy, and it's been looked at very closely, and it demonstrates that where local municipalities have the power and money, they are able to be really effective in changing people's lives and in protecting the environment for the future and tackling climate change in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, the issue of finance. The issue of finance is a very important issue that we are addressing from different angles here at COP, but also in discussions at the G20 in our interlocutions through the Urban 20, the G7, etc. And one of the topics that we find very difficult is to address how local service provision needs to be financed, needs to be understood, not only as an issue for local governments to become stronger, but for the whole system to become stronger. And that is a level of conversation that we are not actually managing to have. It's amazing, eh? But you still have a lot of national delegates and a lot of finance institutions that understand the issue of financing as a power struggle. Who gets the funds? From our perspective of local and regional government, it's a development struggle. And if you want to deliver on the type of development, then we will need to address it from the local level. And one of the chapters of the Summit for the Future is on financing for development. So we hope some of these inputs go through there. Allow me now to go to the Mayor of Amman, Youssef. You are also a member of this advisory panel, and you have always, in our work together, you have always emphasized how you feel that your local experiences could actually inspire United Nations policies. And instead of the other way around, for us, localization, and we will talk, the mayor of Kitchener, our co-president, will also talk about that. For us, localization, when we talk about localization, it's not about implementing something that someone else has decided. Localization is actually the political will to carry out a global common agenda. So how do you feel that local policies can inspire policy making at multilateral level? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Emilia. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, Emilia. Thank you for UCLG. And allow me to speak in Arabic. Take your time.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So, يشرفني أن اليوم أشارك في هذا اللقاء النوعي بالكوب 28 كممثل عن الحكومات المحلية وعضو في المجموعة الاستشارية للأمين العام للأمم المتحدة الخاصة بالحكومات المحلية والإقليمية للإسهام في توجيه السياسات الاستراتيجية وتعزيز التعاون متعدد المستويات لتحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة. بالتأكيد التغير المناخي يفرض علينا وعلى منطقة الشرق الأوسط بشكل عام وشمال أفريقيا وحوض البحر المتوسط بما فيها الأردن. الأردن هي واحدة من أكثر مناطق العالم ندرة في المياه مع ارتفاع درجات الحرارة وانخفاض هطول الأمطار الذي تسبب بضغط شديد على الموارد المحدودة. دعونا نتحدث عن سبب وجود اليوم في هذا اللقاء. موجود نعم كرئيس بلدية وممثل الإدارات المحلية، موجود كعضو بالفريق الاستشاري للأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، موجود أيضا بصفتي أمثل مدينة عربية، أول مدينة نعم أمثل أول مدينة عربية تقدمت بالتقرير الطوعي لتوطين أهداف التنمية المستدامة العالمية، وأيضا بصفتي موجود اليوم لأن بلد الأردن أول دولة بالعالم يتقدم التقرير الطوعي المحلي والوطني للأمم المتحدة في نفس الوقت. هنا قصص نجاح نتحدث عنها، تجارب عملية نتحدث عنها. أيضا بصفة بلد الأردن هي أفقر دولة بالعالم بالمياه ودولة متأثرة بشكل مباشر وكبير بالتغير المناخي. عن تجربتنا المحلية، أمانة عمان عندما تعمل على إعداد خططها وأهدافها المحلية لخدمة المدينة وخدمة المواطنين وخدمة السكان بغض النظر عن وضعهم القانوني، تتأكد تماما بأن هذه الأهداف المحلية تتفق مع أهداف الوطنية التي تقرها الحكومة المركزية، وأيضا نتأكد أنها تتفق مع أهداف التنمية المستدامة العالمية. هذا التنسيق والربط المباشر ضروري جدا للإدارات المحلية والحكومات المحلية. نعم، الكثير يتحدث عن العلاقة ما بين الحكومة المركزية والحكومات المحلية وهناك حالة من التذمر، لكن أعتقد علينا أن نتعامل مع هذا الواقع بتجارب إيجابية. عندما نبني أهدافنا المؤسسية المحلية نتأكد أنها تتفق مع الأهداف الوطنية، وبالتالي تكون العلاقة بشكل أفضل وبإمكاننا أن نتواصل مع العالم والتواصل مع الجهات المانحة بطريقة أفضل. هذا لا يعني أبدا الاستسلام والضعف والتردد عن طرح مشاريعنا المحلية. هناك مسار آخر بإمكاننا أن نتبعه من خلال ممارسة الضغط على الحكومات المحلية المركزية إذا ما احتجنا مزيدا من الدعم. لذلك التنسيق مطلوب، بناء التوافق. دائما نستخدم مصطلح بأن نبحث عن أسباب النجاح ولا نتأخر أو نتردد ونضيع الوقت في البحث عن المبررات وأسباب التأخير. نبحث عن أسباب النجاح وعلينا أن نتقدم بجرأة بهذا الاتجاه. اليوم مطلوب منا أيضا أن نتقدم بخطة وبرنامج عمل واضح للأمانة العامة للأمم المتحدة نحو قمة المستقبل في سبتمبر 2024، وهذا دور فريق العمل اللي موجود بعض المجموعة اللي موجودة اليوم. جزء من هذا الفريق من خلال تجاربنا الحقيقية التي مارسناها على الأرض، من خلال الاحتياجات الحقيقية للسكان والمواطنين، يفرض على الإدارات المحلية أن تكون دائما هي بالخط الأول وهي بالمواجهة. وبالتالي لابد أن نبحث عن وسائل أفضل بالوصول بصورة مباشرة لوسائل الدعم المباشر من الجهات الداعمة للحكومات المحلية، لكن هذا أيضا يفرض علينا أن نتقدم بسياسات واضحة وحوكمة واضحة للتعامل مع هذا التمويل المباشر للإدارات المحلية. عندما نقول أن الحكومات المركزية تحاول أن تتمسك أكثر وتنفق ببطء أو تركز على مشاريعها الوطنية على حساب المشاريع المحلية، لكن لابد أن تكون لدينا خططنا وبرامجنا التنفيذية الواضحة بصورة مباشرة، وأيضا أوجه الإنفاق يجب أن تكون واضحة على هذه البرامج، وأن نتأكد بأنها تنعكس على مدننا وعلى مواطنينا بالشكل الصحيح. أمانة عمان أيضا لديها تجارب كبيرة جدا مع كافة المؤسسات الدولية، مع مؤسسات الأمم المتحدة المختلفة، مع UCLG، مع EBRD، مع GIZ، مع كافة المؤسسات، وحصلنا على تمويل لكثير من المشاريع. الكثير من المشاريع لدينا قصص النجاح نحتاج وقت طويل لسردها في هذا الموضوع. وفيما يتعلق أيضا في مشاريع التغير المناخي، أيضا الحكومات لم تبخل على مشاريعنا التي تقدمنا إليها من خلال الحكومة المركزية. وبالتالي أعتقد أن لدينا أسباب النجاح، أكرر لدينا أسباب النجاح التي نتقدم بها للحكومات المركزية حتى نرفع من مستوى التنسيق، أن لا نبحث عن مبررات لسبب تراجعنا أو تأخرنا في تنفيذ هذه البرامج، ولدينا الفرص الحقيقية لذلك. لابد من توظيف علاقتنا مع الأمم المتحدة ومؤسساتها أيضا لدعم مواقف الإدارات المحلية، وسنتقدم أيضا ببرنامج حول هذا الموضوع باقتراحات تفيد كافة الحكومات المحلية في المنطقة. أمانة عمان كمدينة خطت خطوات واسعة في هذا الأمر، لديها استراتيجيات. أول مدينة بالمنطقة يكون لها خطة تنفيذية للتعامل مع آثار التغير المناخي، الأكشن بلان. أيضا لدينا استراتيجية عمان مدينة خضراء منعت المدينة. لا نتحدث من فراغ، نتحدث من عمل استراتيجي ممنهج علمي واضح، وأيضا لدينا خطط تنفيذية واضحة نعكسها على كافة مشاريعنا التي نقوم بتنفيذها. لدينا الآن خطة استراتيجية لمدة 5 سنوات بدأت في 22 وتنتهي في 2026. دائما هذه مدخلات رئيسية في خطتنا الاستراتيجية، سواء الأهداف الوطنية أو أهداف التنمية المستدامة العالمية وكافة التحديات التي تواجه مدننا. سيكون عندنا هذا العام أول تجربة في العام القادم 24 أول تجربة لاستخدام باصات الكهرباء للنقل العام في مدينة عمان بدعم وتمويل من EBRD، وهذه أيضا قصة نجاح نؤكد على الاستفادة منها. شكرا لكم.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for bringing, I know some of you might need to leave, so please do feel free. We are at COP, we all understand. Yes, yes, yes. Please go and convince the European Commissioner that he needs to support local governments also at United Nations level. Go and do your job. Now, we have someone that wants to join us online, is the president of the UN Habitat Advisory Group on Local Governments, the mayor of Kazan. I think he's ready to take the floor. He would like to bring the discussion also and his concerns on the permafrost situation. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Emilia. Good afternoon, Mr. President Угур Алтай. Dear colleagues, уважаемый господин президент, уважаемая госпожа генеральный секретарь, уважаемые дорогие коллеги, мы собрались сегодня в рамках конференции ООН по изменению климата 2023, чтобы обсудить те проблемы, которые волнуют всех и каждого. Интерес к этому главному климатическому саммиту остается очень высоким даже на фоне иных острых тем международной повестки. Мы все понимаем, как важно вести работу по климатическим проектам именно на уровне городов, а еще важнее, чтобы она охватывала все слои населения. Коллеги, главный тезис моего сегодняшнего выступления таков. Любые меры по борьбе с изменением климата должны способствовать уважению достоинства людей с особенностями, а не усиливать уже существующую социальную несправедливость. Инклюзивная культура предполагает создание условий для полной социализации и включения всех групп людей в жизнь общества. Это также означает осознание и принятие разнообразия в нашем обществе как положительного фактора, а не как проблему. Долгое время во всем мире люди с особенностями игнорировались обществом, они были выключены из активной жизни и находились в постоянной изоляции. Пора нажать кнопку «Включить» тем, кто этого еще не сделал. Помочь таким людям вернуться в общество, чтобы они могли полноценно общаться, обучаться, путешествовать, развиваться и побеждать. Вы знаете историю мамы-спортсменки с синдромом Дауна, которая возглавила региональное отделение специального олимпийского движения в Сенегале. Благодаря этой замечательной женщине количество атлетов специальной олимпиады в этой африканской стране увеличилось с 6 человек до 3000 человек. Мы о такой олимпиаде знаем не понаслышке. Одним из главных спортивных событий Казани этого года стали единые игры специальной олимпиады, в которых приняло участие более 2000 человек. Коллеги, важно научить подрастающее поколение преодолевать страх того, что все люди разные. Мы должны создавать мир, в котором никто не оставлен в стороне в наше непростое время. Я хочу поделиться своим опытом. У нас в городе много лет существует масштабный проект «Добрая Казань». Мы учредили премию «Добрая Казань» для учителей, воспитателей, педагогов, работающих в дополнительном образовании и специалистов узкой направленности, которые работают с детьми ОВЗ и ментальными нарушениями. В прошлом году мы открыли коворкинг, где могут собираться, обучаться и проводить мероприятия благотворительные фонды и некоммерческие организации города. Кроме того, открываются инклюзивные досуговые центры, работает школа волонтеров, функционирует специальный сайт, и это только небольшая часть мероприятий, которые реализуются в рамках проекта «Добрая Казань». Все это позволяет детям и взрослым с особенностями здоровья выйти из изоляции, стать более самостоятельными, а остальным нам всем учиться общаться по-разному. Развивать эмпатию, эмоциональный интеллект. И несмотря на то, что достижения в этом направлении уже есть, еще предстоит пройти большой путь, чтобы сделать город максимально доступным и удобным для всех категорий жителей. И я призываю каждого из вас помнить, что инклюзия – это мощный тренд, который постепенно меняет не только среду, но и наше отношение к ним. Коллеги, подход, учитывающий права и мнения особенных людей, расширяющих их возможности, может стать источником решения в борьбе с изменением климата, которые найдут отклик у большинства. Я думаю, что к этой проблеме должен быть точно такой же, как и ко всем к другим. Все изменения, они... Что-то не слышишь, что ли, да?
Interpretation in French. So please, can you conclude? Because I am understanding you and some participants as well, but we didn't have English. I'm sorry.
You don't have translation?
French, but not in English. So most of the participants could not understand everything. And Turkish also we had. So can you please conclude and I will try to summarize.
Sure. I don't understand, Emilia. May I translate or may I speak again?
Just conclude. Try to finish, yes.
In the beginning?
No,
okay.
No.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, dear colleagues. Уважаемые коллеги, подход, учитывающий права и мнения особенных людей, расширяющих их возможности, может стать источником решений в борьбе с изменением климата, которые найдут отклик у большинства жителей планеты. Я думаю, к этой проблеме подход должен быть точно такой же, как и ко всем другим. Все изменения. Звук включи.
President, I am afraid that we will need to leave it here. We have understood a very big part of your speech. Thank you for intervening and sorry
Okay.
sorry for the difficulties. Thank you. I hope you can hear the applause. So the mayor of Kazan, in 2 words, was trying to bring also connect the issue of dignity and trying to do social work throughout sports to also the climate discussions. In a way to make young people more conscious of protecting nature and including that in the debates here. I'm very, very sorry for those technical problems. Going in this trend of involving youth, making sure that the sport is part of the discussion, that youth also participates in sustainability. I want to go to the mayor of Kitchener, co-president Barry Brabanovic. You are working a lot on trying to link your local action with the Sustainable Development Goals. You've just opened a hub in Kitchener. It links up with also what the mayor of Amman was saying, the importance of voluntary local reviews and making the link between the local and the global also part of the discussion. So would you like to share with us some thoughts on this? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Emilia. And let me begin by also thanking you for not only moderating this session, but for your leadership in the global arena as we tirelessly work to make sure that the voice of local and regional governments is heard on these issues, whether it's at the United Nations or here at COP. For the city of Kitchener, what I can say is from the very beginning on issues of climate change and sustainability, we've taken the approach of asking ourselves the question, if not us, then whom? And we recognized early on that we needed to roll up our sleeves and be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. And so as a city that is home to Canada's technology and innovation area through the Toronto Waterloo Region Innovation Corridor, we've taken that same approach on issues of sustainability, on issues of climate change, and so on. We've also recognized that the only way we're going to tackle this is through partnership because, believe it or not, issues of climate don't know municipal or national borders. In fact, they cross over them regularly. And so locally, we've actually taken an approach of where we've dealt with it, not just as a single municipality, but as a group of 7 municipalities within our region through the Transform Waterloo Region Climate Change Initiative. All of this is really built on the notion that over 60% of of greenhouse gases are impacted directly or indirectly by the decisions that are made in local municipalities. And so we recognize that we must do this work together, but we also must do it at the national and global stage. And so Kitchener has been involved with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on tackling these issues, on working with our Green Municipal Fund, which is a $1.7 billion fund that FCM manages on behalf of the Canadian government, giving loans and grants to municipalities, and by working through ICLEI and UCLG on the global stage on these issues. You know, one of the things that's important to remember here is there's been much said this week about the fact that for the first time ever, municipalities are actually in the same room with world leaders. And that is a huge thing to speak of, because the reality is my first COP in 2009 in Copenhagen, it was a bad situation. My national government didn't want cities even part of it, quite frankly. We were having to go to other countries to leak us information. And it was ICLEI and UCLG that managed to get local governments. I remember we had 6 tickets to actually go in and listen to some of the things that were happening at that time. Fast forward to 2015, where the cities of the world said enough, and together with the partnership with Michael Bloomberg, who was then recently finished as mayor of New York, we were able to create the meeting of 1,000 mayors that Mayor Hidalgo hosted in Paris, and I believe was a key meeting to get the remaining countries of the world on board to sign the agreement that happened in Paris. Fast forward now to 2023 and COP28, and here we are where, in fact, the host country together with Bloomberg, together with UCLG and C40 and ICLEI, have arranged for the first time a summit that actually saw us in the same room minutes after global leaders opening up the summit that has allowed us to have a voice at the table. And that has been something that's been very key for us internationally. But for us locally, we've also tried to apply it. So as I said, we've taken the SDGs both this year and 4 years ago, included them in our strategic plan. This year, as Amelia said, we recently opened an SDG Idea Factory and incubator for small businesses that's part of the UCLG local action hubs. And we're continuing this work going forward. But in closing, I really want to remind us, as we reflect on all of this, on some of the themes that were discussed at the opening of the summit on Friday. And you'll recall some of the speakers said, we have a lot of technology, a lot of solutions, but the only thing we don't have is time. Our success as a planet will be measured in the towns, cities, and regions everywhere. As local leaders, we must demand a seat at the table with national leaders. And from now on, we must make sure that mayors stay in the room. And that is, I think, the rallying call for all of us going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Deputy Minister, President Tao, for being with us. We're going to take 5 more minutes in this session. We are late. I want to give the floor first to Lucy Slack, the Secretary General of CLGF and member of the Global Task Force. Please, Lucy, do take a seat up front. The logistics are a bit difficult. We are crowded. But please feel free to sit over there. Give us your thoughts on how we are trying to also organize the inputs of all the networks of local and regional governments through the Global Task Force into this advisory group, and how we are also trying to organize our voices here at COP within the LGMA that ICLEI is facilitating. So it is an organization. Sometimes it might look disorganized, but there is a very deep coordination of the constituency that is working here. So how do you see this moving forward, and just after your Congress of CLGF?
Thanks very much, Amelia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So nice to be here. I won't take a lot of time because a lot of things that I was going to say have been said, but I think what Amelia talks about in terms of the Global Task Force is really critical, because I think we've been on a very long journey as local government in terms of recognizing that actually we are much stronger when we work together. And in many ways, the Global Task Force reflects that. So within that, we reflect the differences between our different organizations, municipalities, regions, local governments, cities. But what it does do is enable us to really come together with some strong messaging and some strong kind of collaboration. And it's like any big international meeting, we're always going to be much stronger if we come with one voice. And I think where in many ways, the Global Task Force is a place for us to bring all of those ideas together and really think about how we refine our messaging. So I really hope that the Global Task Force will actually play a strong role in feeding some of the messaging into the mayors who are going to be sitting on the advisory committee, working alongside the Secretary General, because of course, you know, we have this rich experience. And I think that from my point of view, one of the things we really want to make sure we feed into that process is not just our thoughts, but our tangible evidence, our knowledge, the things that we know work at the local level, because that's really where the leadership comes from local government. And I think that as the mayors sitting on that advisory committee are in an incredibly strong role in terms of bringing that forward. And I would say the same about the LGMA process here. You know, we see obviously ICLEI has played a huge role, UCLG